exciting television series that brings you each week the actual films of colorful adventures in all parts of the world. The golden journeys of real people.
And here to present tonight's real-life adventure is Jack Douglas.
Thank you so much. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time in our program series, we go to the Arctic Circle, to the frozen wastelands where lives the Eskimo. You're about to see some of the most spectacular films ever shot north of Nome, Alaska. Our guest tonight, Mr. Ewing Scott, is a man who has been to the Arctic Circle, well, more than a dozen times, and he's here in our studios tonight, ready to present these truly spectacular films. At this point in our program series, we wanted to bring you the life of the Eskimo north of Nome, Alaska, the Eskimo of the Arctic Circle. And so we looked at a lot of real-life adventure films made up there in Nome and Point Barrow, and what did we find? Well, we found that the Eskimo of today is eating canned foods, he wears plaid shirts, and he's lighting fires with matches. But seriously, in order to bring you the Eskimo as he really was, we had to solicit the help of the Hollywood motion picture producers, the people who for many years have made some of these great Eskimo documentary films. And it's my pleasure to present to you at this time a man who has written and directed perhaps more Eskimo documentary adventure films than anyone else in the world, Mr. Ewing Scott. And Mr. Scott, it's a sincere pleasure, sir, to welcome you. I want to thank you so much for your help in identifying some of these scenes that we're going to see tonight and in helping us put them together. Now, when did you start this fabulous motion picture career of yours, sir?
A long time ago, back in 1924.
Uh-huh. Now, earlier I said that you'd been to the Arctic Circle more than 12 times. Was I right? Is that about it?
You just about hit it on the head, Jack.
Uh-huh. What are some of the Eskimo documentary films that you've worked with, Mr. Scott?
Well, besides Igloo, there was Arctic Flight, Arctic Manhunt, Arctic Fury.
I know Harpoon. I'm going to put that in right now.
Don't rub it in.
Now, how did you come to concentrate on Eskimo adventure films, Mr. Scott? Have you just found them profitable? Is that the reason, or are there other reasons?
No, I think the country gets a hold of you. That's about it, Jack.
That Arctic Circle country, huh?
You want to go back all the time.
That's a lot like people who've gone to Africa, and they say there's a call of Africa that brings them back. Some people believe it, some people don't, but I've certainly heard it expressed. Mr. Scott, we'd be very grateful if you'd stand by, narrate these films for us, and later on perhaps bring us some more interesting information about your career in the Arctic Circle. Thank you, Mr. Scott. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are some truly spectacular scenes from great Eskimo motion pictures directed by Mr. Ewing Scott. Tonight's adventure takes place here in the Arctic Circle.
You know, Jack, in the old days, just getting the Arctic was a tough job. After 13 days of surface travel, we'd have to make a 5 or 6 hour hop in a little place this one.
Of course, it's a lot different today, isn't it?
Yeah, big ships, 4s and 6s. Lots of luxury, you know, hot lunches.
Uh-huh.
That's a de Havilland Moth, a pretty rugged little ship, Jack.
A fine, fine ship. Here, what's he doing? Is this deliberate?
I think he's playing a game there with those glaciers, the vibrations knocking that ice loose.
Well, this is sort of like being in a nice canyon and shooting off a gun or something. Is that right?
That's right. The steamers, tourist steamers, used to blast their whistle and for the edification of the tourists.
Is that so? And of course, they'd achieve the same result, is that it? The sharp whistle, and down would come icebergs.
Tremendous falls of it.
Of course, this country obviously hasn't changed. Nature seldom changes that much, even in 20 or 25 years, so this is still a pretty good idea of what the Arctic is like, would you say, Mr. Scott?
Well, there's a recession of the ice age, of course. The glaciers are receding all the time. This is rugged country to fly in, Jack. You see that ice arch down there?
Uh-huh.
This character, believe it or not, is going to fly right under that, Jack. Now watch this. I don't know why he did it. There, how do you like it?
Just incredible. Of course, these bush pilots are pretty fabulous people, are they not?
Well, they're amazing men, all of them.
Have you known many of these people?
I've known and flown with most of them. Now this fellow's heading north again, Jack. here we are at Point Barrow. Here's where you run out of land.
This, then, would be the end of so-called Eskimo land.
That's true.
Now, how far south of the North Pole are we here at Point Barrow?
You're 600 miles there, right there at Barrow. Well, Jack, here we've assembled a typical Eskimo village.
Mm-hmm.
Snow houses and the usual activity. Of course, we're over the Arctic Ocean here, about 20 fathoms of it. It isn't like living on the tundra. Now, these women are flensing sealskin, cleaning and tanning.
That's sort of a softening process, I gather, isn't it? And cleaning the bristles, is that what it amounts to?
That's it. And this woman is preparing to crimp soles of their mucklucks, footwear.
Of course, today they get these things from the trading post, don't they?
That's true. Here's a primitive drill, Jack. And the Eskimos here are repairing harpoons and gear, ready for the hunt.
Even the kids take part in this. Is that so? They teach them rather young, I imagine.
Train them young. They certainly do. It seems they need a new dwelling here, and they're going to do it with snow blocks.
Building of an igloo. Now, let me ask you this, Mr. Scott. Is it true that the Eskimo used to live in igloos of this type and just ice cakes, as we were taught in our school days, so to say?
Only when they're crossing the sea ice.
It wasn't a permanent dwelling then?
Not at all, Jack, no.
Mm-hmm.
Today they use a lightweight tent they toss on the sled, and they can put it up in a tenth the time.
Now, when you say only on a hunt, I'd gather by that you mean that when they're out for a great distance of time away from the particular village of theirs, and they build these as a sort of 1 or 2 day emergency type shelter. Is that it?
That's it, when they're out for several days and they can't get back to their permanent village.
Huh?
They're doing a pretty smooth job of masonry here with that snow there. It's a lost art, you know, Jack. The younger generation can't do it at all. They clink those cracks up with loose snow now, and the blizzard will do the rest in molding it.
And make it fairly windproof, I'd gather.
Entirely windproof, yeah.
Now, what type of heat do they use inside those igloos, if any?
They burn lichens in a seal oil lamp, Jack. Now, here's a man coming in from the hunt.
The proud hunter.
Proud hunter with no worry about refrigerating his fresh kill, either. It's hard as a rock, as you can see. And they're very proud of it when they come in. They've got to get all the salutations and greetings. It's a big moment in this man's life. He can bring in a seal a day. And the rest of the villagers want to join in it, of course.
That word hunt seems to predominate everything about Eskimo life, or it did in the old days when these films were made. It was just a question of survival, I gather, from what reading I have done about the Eskimo. Isn't that so?
You're right, Jack. It is survival. And improvidence. They won't store any of it. They've got to eat it all as it comes in.
Is that so? They won't put away for tomorrow?
That's their big problem, Jack. Now they're going to dance for this seal that's been brought in here. It always means a dance and a celebration and play. Here's old Nashukluk. Believe it or not, that old gentleman is close to 90.
Yeah, look at him. He's quite an interpreter.
He's cute, isn't he?
Oh, he's quite a fella. Look at the poses.
He tells a story, a different story, every time he dances.
Uh-huh. Of course, I suppose you motion picture people were rather pleased when you got a natural actor like that fellow, weren't you?
You bet. That's 1 in a million, that guy. A real pantomimist.
Lots of expression, a lot of pride in his face, too.
See, the children join in, too.
Is this sort of the celebration after a feast, more or less?
Before a feast.
Oh.
It's good these kids have sealskin pants on because they really wear them down. It's a good-looking mother and her baby.
Of course, kids have to have their pets and have their little games, even in the Arctic.
Here's a game of foot juggling. It looks rather simple, but if you tried, you'd go right on your ear, Jack. And they never miss. They go do it by the hour. Here's blanket tossing from a walrus hide skin. You get 25, 30 feet out of this. A broken leg once in a while. just to work up an appetite for those seal, the ugruk they brought in. The drummers never stop.
What were those things that they were beating there? What are they made of? Skin, I assume?
It's a hoop out of driftwood with stretched sealskin on it. Now they're dishing that food out. Now here's a very interesting technique. Jack, they stuff the food in their mouth and cut it off right under the nose.
Ooh. I never noticed that before. I hadn't recalled ever seeing anything like it, as a matter of fact.
Now they're getting ready for another hunt. I believe this is a spot, yes, the polar bear. They spotted him. They're gauging the distance out to that floe, and they're figuring on the man who's going to go out to get him. I think they're going to send this big fella in a kayak. And now, Jack, we're going to see an amazing hunting sequence. And now, Jack, here they've chosen the best hunter in the village, and he's a fabulous man. Made a number of pictures with him. He handles that kayak very well, and he's got a little harpoon up in the bow there.
That's quite an art in itself, handling one of those kayaks, isn't it?
It really is an art, and a lost art at that, Jack.
And there's his prey, of course.
This is prey, and he knows he's being hunted, and he's starting off. This is a tremendous feat of hunting, I think. I mean, to go out single-handedly after a polar bear, chase him down in a frail craft like a kayak.
Did he get not to be mercenary, but did he get a bonus for this?
He really got a bonus for this one. Now watch this fellow here. Still after him. He's still chasing that bear, Jack, and the bear knows it. Now he's going to climb out. Watch this, Jack. Here's the second one.
He stopped him with the first one. Is that it?
Here's the killer, here. Big whaling iron right in the chest. Let's finish him here. Now, Jack, here is a blizzard. Here is the nemesis of the Eskimos, and it can hit them any time. It can hit them for 3 days or 3 weeks. It's the north wind. That snow, it cuts like a knife when it hits you. It isn't in the air, it's blown from the ice, full of ice splinters. The only thing they can do is get under cover and get under cover fast. And that's what these people are doing now. They're hurrying back to those snow igloos.
And you people, of course, had to be out there photographing this. Or were you? I know your cameraman was.
The cameraman, the director can duck in under shelter. But that cameraman has to stand and take it, and we had a great man, Roy Klapke, and he did a wonderful job on this show. Now that blizzard is building up a little bit all the time. The hunter's been out to see if he can help some of these sleds get back to the village.
Had you people been waiting for a sequence like this, or did it just happen to come along?
Peculiarly, we did wait, and we waited a couple of months before we got a blizzard like this. And there's no wind machines there.
This isn't a Hollywood soundstage, is it?
No, that's the real thing, and that's rugged. You can hardly see those fellows back in there. They're putting everything under cover, under shelter.
How long do one of these blizzards generally last, Mr. Scott?
We've sat for 5 weeks indoors under one. Sometimes they'll come and go.
A blizzard like this?
Yes.
5 weeks?
5 weeks. The north wind pours it on. Now they've sighted the whale, I believe. And there's their umiak.
Whoops, last man in.
A very rugged craft, a great sea craft, that umiak is. Driftwood frames covered by walrus hide.
And this is a whale hunt, you say?
That's right. That's our noted hunter up there in the front. There's a bowhead broaching. He controls the ship here. And he's a great hunter, no matter what the hunt is, whether it's walrus or whale or bear.
I can sort of picture that at about this moment you had some pretty grandiose ideas of what kind of a sequence you're going to get, huh?
That's right, Jack, but I won't build you up on this one. We never got this whale.
This is one that ended in frustration, eh?
That's it. He just outswam us, that's all.
I imagine that your cameramen were in another umiak. Is that the idea?
Yeah, a catamaran set up with the camera in the stern of the other boat. Now we're shooting right back at these hunters.
And he's going farther and farther away. The whale is, of course.
She's a cow out there with a calf, and she's going to get out of the territory. Just too fast for us, that's all. And they know it, but they never stop trying. Now they've veered off in another direction. And here are walrus. A sighted walrus. I believe it was the same afternoon. So there was some compensation to their effort.
The budget wasn't entirely expended in vain.
That's right. Now there's a real pan of walrus. There's a lot of walrus in that flow ice there.
There are more walrus there, frankly,
That's
than
one
I've
of
ever
the
seen
largest
in my
I've
life.
ever seen. You're right there. And these boys really mixed us. They really boarded those floes and tied into those walrus that afternoon. They're working way over their heads for us. Led by that same hunter. Now those walrus can rip that skin boat apart and send it down anytime a wounded walrus is a bad animal to approach. These boys are right in there
Look
among
at that.
them.
They're right there on the ice with them, aren't they?
That's right.
Of course, had you expected that kind of courage from these
No,
hunters?
I can't say that I did, Jack.
You
Here's
probably,
our hunter.
You probably are just thinking of a few harpoon shots like this.
Just hoping. But they really delivered.
Mr. Scott, I think this is one of the most fantastic Eskimo sequences that I have ever seen. I've never seen anything like that, and I've looked at an awful lot of adventure film.
They did a great job for us. And now, Jack, here's a sequence we were all very proud of. We had wanted to reenact a situation where a tribe of Eskimos had been caught on the polar seas during the breakup.
The ice breakup, that is.
That's right.
When the thaw season sets in, and of course the ice starts to melt. Is that the idea?
Tremendous movement of polar ice all to the northward.
All right, Mr. Scott, let's sit back and watch. And here, ladies and gentlemen, is the race to survival sequence from one of the great Eskimo films of our time, photographed on the scene while it actually happened. The sequence will now speak for itself.
I can honestly say that this was the toughest, but at the same time, the most exciting Eskimo sequence I have ever directed.
Thank you, Mr. Scott, for some truly spectacular films. And once again, I'd like to remind any of our viewers who may have tuned in late tonight that tonight we're showing some great scenes from Hollywood motion pictures directed by Mr. Ewing Scott in the Arctic Circle. Now, Mr. Scott, when was your last trip to the Arctic?
I went up there the last time, Jack, in early '52.
A motion picture?
Yes, went up there and made a feature, took Wayne Morris.
Looking right now?
Yes, I'm going to go back again in maybe 30 days.
You know, there's a saying that there hasn't been a picture made in Africa that hasn't made a lot of box office money for Hollywood. I'm wondering if the same can't be true of these Eskimo adventure films, because there have been a lot of them. You've directed a lot of great ones, and I understand now that you're making more, as perhaps others are too. What's the appeal of these Eskimo adventure films?
It's adventurous footage up there. It's great country, wild country, primitive, and it's spectacular.
That's reason enough. Thank you very, very much, Mr. Ewing Scott, for these truly spectacular films.
It's been a pleasure. Arctic Flight, Arctic Manhunt, Arctic Fury.
I know Harpoon. I'm going to put that in right now.
Don't rub it in.
Now, how did you come to concentrate on Eskimo adventure films, Mr. Scott? Have you just found them profitable? Is that the reason, or are there other reasons?
No, I think the country gets a hold of you. That's about it, Jack.
That Arctic Circle country, huh?
You want to go back all the time.
That's a lot like people who've gone to Africa, and they say there's a call of Africa that brings them back. Some people believe it, some people don't, but I've certainly heard it expressed. Mr. Scott, we'd be very grateful if you'd stand by, narrate these films for us, and later on perhaps bring us some more interesting information about your career in the Arctic Circle. Thank you, Mr. Scott. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are some truly...
Bold Journey, the exciting television series that brings you each week the actual films of colorful adventures in all parts of the world, the golden journeys of real people.
And here to present tonight's real-life adventure is Jack Douglas.
Thank you so much. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time in our program series, we go to the Arctic Circle, to the frozen wastelands where lives the Eskimo. You're about to see some of the most spectacular films ever shot north of Nome, Alaska. Our spectacular scenes from great Eskimo motion pictures directed by Mr. Ewing Scott. Tonight's adventure takes place here in the Arctic Circle.
You know, Jack, in the old days, just getting the Arctic was a tough job. After 13 days of surface travel, we'd have to make a 5 or 6 hour hop in a little place this one.
Of course, it's a lot different today, isn't it?
Yeah, big ships, 4s and 6s. Lots of luxury, you know, hot lunches.
Uh-huh.
That's a de Havilland Moth, a pretty rugged little ship, Jack.
A fine, fine show. Here, what's he doing? Is this deliberate?
I think he's playing a game there with those glaciers, the vibrations knocking that ice loose.
Well, this is sort of like being in a nice canyon. And it's my pleasure to present to you at this time a man who has written and directed perhaps more Eskimo documentary adventure films than anyone else in the world, Mr. Ewing Scott. And Mr. Scott, it's a sincere pleasure, sir, to welcome you. I want to thank you so much for your help in identifying some of these scenes that we're going to see tonight and in helping us put them together. Now, when did you start this fabulous motion picture career of yours, sir?
A long time ago, back in 1924.
Uh-huh. Now, earlier I said that you'd been to the Arctic Circle more than 12 times. Was I right? Is that about it?
You just about hit it on the head, Jack.
Uh-huh. What are some of the Eskimo documentary films that you've worked with, Mr. Scott?
Well, besides Igloo, there was...
Tonight, Mr. Ewing Scott. is a man who has been to the Arctic Circle, well, more than a dozen times. And he's here in our studios tonight, ready to present these truly spectacular films. At this point in our program series, we wanted to bring you the life of the Eskimo north of Nome, Alaska, the Eskimo of the Arctic Circle. And so we looked at a lot of real-life adventure films made up there in Nome and Point Barrow, and what did we find? Well, we found that the Eskimo of today is eating canned foods, he wears plaid shirts, and he's lighting fires with matches. But seriously, in order to bring you the Eskimo as he really was, we had to solicit the help of the Hollywood motion picture producers, the people who for many years have made some of these great Eskimo documentary films.